being simulcast out in multiple directions today because we have podcasting partners of Transform You Media Network, and we have the PAC channel with our friend Zach Clayton, and we always are giving great kudos to the great work being done by the Disability Channel. So this, the World of Ability vodcast show, video streaming out through Facebook Live, YouTube Live, and then syndicated out to our podcasting partners. We are on many platforms. So we have many of them are with the video and some are just the audio portion. This show was created July 26, 2020 as an expansion of what I set out to do from radio. River West Radio, riverwestradio.com. We still do live shows, 7:30 Central, 6:30 Mountain Time, 8:30 Eastern Time. So again, riverwestradio.com. That is Ability MK Now radio show, 29 minutes of power-packed radio programming, all with the same idea, World of Ability and Ability MK Now, all structured to find discussions, talk radio, talk videos, conversations, talk shows, speaking from the perspective of people with disabilities. So we hit the demographics of people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, the deaf community, blind community, people with physical disabilities, those living in chronic pain, everyone with a mental health diagnosis, and those that have a goal of substance use reduction. And in a year of programming with these shows, we try to be expansive, a bit of lifestyle development. We look at faith life, service life, lifelong learning, what we do in our civic duties, our patriotism, what we do in participating with politics and government and agency work. And then we have being productive members of society in our economic realm, business, being employed, being a part of the workforce. So Emily is saying, are any of you going to have your video on? We all have our video on. So I don't know what Emily's trying to help us with production here. And so Emily, feel free to type back in here. What do you mean? Are any of you going to have your video on? We all have our video on. I don't know if she's having bandwidth problems. Sometimes with these shows, if you're not seeing our video, it might be because you're having bandwidth issues. So again, we also want to make sure, again, in a year of program, not promising it here today, but we like to talk about the fun things we do in life, hobbies, pastime, leisure activities, travel, sports, recreation, therapeutic activities, and so forth. So there you have it, the backdrop. And again, my name is Kurt Roskoff. I do see that Denise is not here yet. We do. We have Barbara Weinstein is joining us, one of our regular panelists. Thank you for joining us, Barbara. Glad you can make it. Denise is on a tentative possibility of not knowing if she's going to be able to make it before the end of the show, or if she will slip in here and make a cameo appearance. So if we miss her today, please know that she is juggling things as of the moment and not sure if it'll work out. And then we have Mariana Waikiki. I'm not sure if she'll be able to make it on today or not, but we have a few here. We have Cheryl Scott from, representing Legal Shield and ID Shield from Prepaid Legal Services Incorporated. We have Tim Richardson from Hope Advance. So we're going to dive in here a little bit from Prepaid Legal Services Incorporated, the idea of Legal Shield, ID Shield. I got involved in disability services and disability advocacy, working with our legislators and thinking of the laws of the land here in the USA. Cheryl comes to us from Canada. So Canada. So we got an international show going here for sure. But for sure, the idea of making sure that, our rights are protected and that, we are on the correct side of, our interactions and our business that we have, personal business, whatever it may be with others. And then I can share that I used to be a Primerica Financial Services representative. And the history there is with Art Williams and the Primerica company, there is this opportunity as insurance reps, to have a little value add, to reach a little bit into that prepaid legal services bucket. And they have something with Primerica that some legal services are available on the financial. Sometimes it works nice that they're kind of coupled, bundled together. But Cheryl, before we get too far into the products and what it all is in the company, I want to learn a little bit of your story, Cheryl, because there was a day, however long ago, I want you to start from before Prepaid Legal Services Incorporated. Before you knew about any of this, what was your life like? What happened that you got introduced to this? And how did you get won over to the point that now you are representing the products? Take it away, Cheryl. What's your background to this?
All good questions. This is actually career number 3 for me. I started out in advertising, helping employers hire. So I specialized in help wanted advertising prior to the internet. So that kind of gives you an idea where my age range is at. Transferred from there into career development. So I was career coaching initially students to help them start their careers, and then was working with a government agency helping unemployed adults for a dozen or more years, which was very eye-opening to sort of be on the front lines and be a service provider that was funded by the government, mandated by the government, but we ourselves weren't necessarily government employees. So it really gave an insight, and we served pretty much everybody that was not a full-time student, and was, a resident or landed immigrant in Canada. So it was a huge population, including those with disabilities and the homeless and seniors and youth and you name it, all over the map. And as I say, it was quite eye-opening. There was many people who learned how to navigate the system and perhaps get more than they were entitled to, more than they deserved, more than they needed in many cases. And on the flip side, there was an equal, if not larger, portion of the population that either didn't realize there was help out there for them, or for whatever reason didn't fit into the government guidelines and slipped through the cracks, which was very, very disheartening. So I loved what I did. I wasn't necessarily loving where I was doing it. And I don't know if it's the same in the United States, but up here in Canada, when you do anything associated with the government, you spend way more time doing paperwork and attending meetings than you ever do helping people, which is also super frustrating. So as I say, I loved what I did. I wasn't necessarily in love with where I was doing it. A friend of mine told me about Legal Shield. My husband and I needed our wills and powers of attorney written, and $30 a month sounded way better than the $1,100 we'd been previously quoted by a lawyer. So we signed up for the service, not expecting to use it for much else, because we were good people. We didn't use lawyers. Well, we didn't use lawyers because we couldn't afford lawyers. When you think about the wealthy few, they don't do anything without talking to their lawyer. They don't sign anything without showing it to their lawyer. Well, now we get to do exactly the same thing. So we learned how to use it proactively and to our advantage to make sure our rights are protected. If you don't know your rights, you might as well not have any. And that's an unfortunate situation, but a reality for many, many people, particularly in the disabled community. They just don't know what and who is out there to help them. So anyways, I digress. Back on track with the story. So I was working at the time. Legal Shield found me. We fell in love with the service. So naturally, I started recommending it to folks. And my friend thankfully circled back and said, "Hey, crazy lady, stop handing out my business card. Join my team. Make some money. You need a side gig. Sooner or later your job is going to end." Well, and it did. About 3 years after that, funding got cut, my job ended, and I thought, well, here is plan B. I love to help people, And now with Legal Shield, I get to do it in way more ways besides just employment.
Mhm.
So that's kind of how I got started. And I mean, as I say, I love helping people, and it's the happy ending stories that really won me over. I love hearing the happy endings. No matter who it is, if they can get questions answered, documents reviewed, um, when it comes to things like lawsuits and divorces, the people that win are often the ones with the most money. That's just the reality, right? We call them the last people standing, and that's just unfortunate and unfair. So with Legal Shield, we can bring a little bit of equality and fairness, not a lot of equality and fairness into the playing field. So there you go. That's my story.
There you go. Great story. And so as we are in this people business, and when I talk about disability services, can easily transcend us over to health and human services. And so on Tim's side of the equation, there's a little slogan that Hope Advance goes by in terms of stories of some people. They present sometimes as
broken,
busted,
busted,
or
and disgusted.
Yeah, that's right. So before we get into all that, Tim, you made some comments about that. You are set up. Were you saying that you are a client of Prepaid Legal, or you got?
Yeah, was Prepaid Legal back in the day, and of course Legal Shield, and then they changed the name again. I work with one of the top 100 in the country, Andrea Wacker, here in Colorado Springs area. Anyway, I actually ran across it over 20 years ago, was a member for a while, then became an associate, and that was all in the southern Indiana and Kentucky area. And then now what I do is one of our I keep getting the terminology correct, but part of Hope Advanced is also called Advancing You Forward, where we work with people in their backgrounds, credit, tax liens, and student loans. Well, needless to say, in almost every one of those, they're going to need some kind of legal help. So we collaborate. We are not on the back end of that, signing people up as members and or associates, but we pass them off to the right people. And from the legal standpoint, it's always Legal Shield. There is no, I'm doing this for you, Cheryl. You can thank me later. There is no reasonable alternative to Legal Shield. Even if you're a business and you have an attorney that you use. I used to sell the business packages to the companies so they could check their stuff out with Legal Shield before they went on the clock with their regular attorney they had on retainer. But you, in effect, as Legal Shield member, have your own law firm, because an attorney is useless unless he's in the area of law you need them to be in, and with very few exceptions, such as trademark, copyright, and some of the IRS stuff, Legal Shield membership gives you access to all that. So if you don't have it, you need to look into it. Obviously, Cheryl can talk to you. I guess you can cross state lines or country. I lost my ears. You can cross country lines, can't you?
Yes, all of
That's what I thought. So
US.
there you go. You don't need her to be in front of you except on a Zoom link or something. Okay. Yeah. So anyway, yeah, did they answer that? And it's quite honestly, what was the old phrase? One of the I don't go anywhere without it. Old American Express or whatever. I don't have American Express, but I don't go anywhere without Legal Shield. I've got it personal, both my businesses and all my employees, with the exception, I think, of a couple of my part-timers, all have Legal Shield.
Brilliant.
And ID Shield. It really is brilliant. It's probably the best ancillary or benefit that any employer can provide through payroll deduction. And you don't have to pay for it. You can, or you can pay some of it, but I have 40 years of insurance experience. So that was also, to me, if I'm going to talk to you about insurance, you're going to hear about Legal Shield for one reason or another, because you need it. Okay. Anything else you want to know about Legal Shield?
Oh yeah, we are going to take a deep dive into Legal Shield because we're going to get into the fine print. And I studied business law.
Right.
Back in technical college days at Moraine Park Technical College, I took a business law class, and one of the precepts that we were taught for Uniform Commercial Code is the reasonable person test. So we have one of our panelists here, Barbara Weinstein. I'm going to bring her in as one of our reasonable people. Hi, Barbara. I want to see what you're thinking of with this Prepaid Legal Services Incorporated conversation, Legal Shield, ID Shield with identity theft protection. Have you ever heard of this company before, Barbara, or is this new?
Yeah, I have. And, I know at times going to, what is it for? It was supposed to be for poor people that need legal help. And that was, oh, we don't deal with that. That's, it was very, very hard to get any help. And then I heard about Legal Shield, and I was just thinking, well, it's going to be the same thing. It's going to be, you give your money, but then when you need help, it's not going to be anyone in the direction of where you need the help. We'll be there to help you. So it's really exciting to hear that you'll have lawyers who work with all different aspects of the law. And you can find people to help you. So that was just exciting for me to hear that. That was really ear opening and eye opening to, and exciting to hear that, because I know I've seen again and again, the difference in somebody being heard. It's not how good your lawyer is, difference in being able to get help would have to do with how good your lawyer is, and that would have to do with how much money you could come up with. So this is an exciting concept for me. It's kind of like when we talk about, in other countries, how everybody has medical help. I'm going, wow, people can have good legal help. I'm excited. I'm glad to hear this. That's where I'm coming from.
Yeah, and this is an interesting dynamic because Prepaid Legal Services Incorporated, the idea of prepaid legal services like this started disrupting the marketplace 50 years ago. And it's easy for me to remember because I happen to be 50 years old. So it's been around all of my life. And but I didn't learn about it until about 25 years ago. So half of my life went by before I even knew about this marvelous company. So there you have it there. So many people are still learning about this company. Do you experience that, Cheryl? That
absolutely. We have barely hit 2% market share in the United States, and we're not even anywhere near 2% market share in Canada yet, meaning that more people don't know about us than do. And that's one of the, there's pros and cons to everything, but that is one of the challenges when you rely on word of mouth marketing. Now, social media, of course, is helping, but, how could we put all of this information on a billboard? Even a magazine ad, there would be just far too many words. People wouldn't read it. So word of mouth really is our best form of advertising. And yet it's also the most challenging because it takes time to reach everybody, right? So we're not even at that critical point yet where we've become a household name, but we look forward to the day when we do. Interesting fun fact for everybody, when Prepaid Legal started back in 1972, it was originally called the Sportsman's Motor Club. Mm-hmm. Because all they did was traffic related legal things. Now we've come a long way, and these days I've not run across anything that our lawyers can't help with to one degree or another.
Oh, yeah. I know I've had my traffic violations. I've been in traffic court myself. So, and I did not have the benefit of Prepaid Legal Services Incorporated or Legal Shield or anything like that. How about you, Tim? You got a perfect driving record? Are you?
Well, I never had to use it for a driving record, but that's one of their unique systems now, especially with electronics. You can take a picture of the ticket, send it to your Legal Shield office. In our case, it's in Denver, Riggs Avenue, and they'll represent you. And that if they were in Wisconsin, okay, and had an issue, and you wanted to disagree with the ticket, you're going to have to show up in court. You don't have to with Legal Shield, unless it was some egregious criminal act of some kind, which they're not going to mess with criminal stuff. But the fact is, I don't care if you're at 2 a.m. and on Christmas morning and you have an incident, and it's pretty obvious that they're not on your side necessarily, or don't know, because so much of that you can't say anything. Who are you going to call? Your attorney. And you do. And guess what? If you call your attorney in Wisconsin at 2 a.m. on Christmas morning, you will get a live body. It's one of the attorneys assigned to be on that 12-hour shift and represent you in an emergency. Who cares if you're from Hawaii or wherever? They'll represent you. So it is real deal. And the stories that Cheryl can tell you, and some of the ones that I've heard, and a couple up close and personal with identity theft, etc. And I've never had a legal issue come up that bothered me. Why? Because I got Legal Shield. I call it. I'm in the middle of one right now, but it's just collections, and not collecting from me, but from one of my customers. And I thought, well, you thought you were going to get away with this. You're not. You're going to get a letter in the mail next week, and it's going to have 6 names on it from a legal firm. All right. Do you think they'll open that? Yeah. And if they don't, they still have problems. And the fact is, you think they'll pay the bill? Oh, they will. Okay. I guarantee you they will. And it's just for the cost of my membership as a business. Then I had a trademark question. And we're still working on that, but they're sending me the specific referrals through their system of the trademark attorneys that I can talk to. And it didn't cost me anything to talk to either one of them, unless I go ahead and actually do business with the trademark attorney. But I have a specific network discount, et cetera, very almost similar to the insurance networks in so many cases. So, and the legal world is really tough to navigate by yourself. No, it's impossible to navigate by yourself. I've got an employee that works for me now and said, well, my brother-in-law is an attorney. Yeah, guess what kind of attorney he is? He is a labor attorney and totally useless to work with her in her divorce case. He can't. And guess what? He's going through a divorce. And he took even though he knows some people, but he isn't running that circle. So he's taken some advice from her and some of the attorneys that were recommended to her. Because it's gonna be a contested divorce. That's another story. Cheryl can do all that. But anyway, yeah, I've had them. I know my membership has been 2 different things, over 20 years total between the two of them. This particular one's like 14 years. So
Awesome. Yeah, I've got one of a good friend of mine who is also now a Legal Shield associate. Legal Shield found him about 4 or 5 years ago when he was in a 5-month dispute with his landlord. Now, my friend Mark is completely 100% blind. And that's happened over a number of years, but he is now 100% blind. And the issue he was having is his stove, the thermostat had broke. And whenever he would set his oven to 325, 350, usual baking, cooking temperatures, it was going to over 600 degrees. Crazy dangerous for anybody, let alone somebody who's fully blind. So he politely went to the superintendent and the landlord and said, hey, my oven needs fixing or replacing. Yeah, we'll get to it. Yeah, we'll get to it. Yeah, well, 5 months later, he heard about Legal Shield and thought, okay, here's something I can use, because he couldn't afford to call a lawyer over something as small as this. Got this membership, spoke to the lawyers, they wrote a letter, bam, he got a new stove with dials on the front, super important when you're blind, an apology letter, $500 rebate on his rent, and he has never had an issue with his landlord since. He calls, they jump. Now, was the 5-month delay previously because Mark is blind? Who knows? Maybe they're like that with all their tenants. But the reality was, Mark he's a professional clown. He does not make six figures a year. It's what he can do being fully blind. So, he couldn't afford a regular attorney. Here in Ontario, they're average $450 an hour. So it just leveled the playing field for him. And then more recently, just this past December, he went to get a line of credit through the bank, and they said, sorry, your credit's maxed. He said, what are you talking about? Well, turns out somebody'd gotten a hold of his social insurance number and a bunch of other pieces of identity and took out a $30,000 line of credit in his name. He had no idea. Now, again, would the situation be any different if he was cited? I don't know. He might have discovered it sooner. I'm sure whoever stole his identity probably did it digitally and don't even know that he's blind. But still, again, it levels the playing field, right? Because he only had to make one phone call. No stressing, no guessing. Our licensed investigators went to work to figure out what had been stolen out of his identity. Was it some of it or all of it? And then they did whatever the heck it is that they do and fixed it all. The beautiful thing was Mark didn't have to stress, and he could get on with his life in the meantime. Didn't have to, email 60,000 people and make phone calls and sit on hold and all that nonsense. They did it all for him and repaired his credit score, which he had no idea had been severely damaged by this. So a couple examples. I mean, he alone has dozens of stories. But yeah, it can be powerful. It's everything from the trivial to the traumatic. But the reality is when something's happening to you, it's traumatic no matter how trivial it is.
I'm excited. I see how this can help so many people, because when you've been really poor and then all of a sudden you're getting something like food stamps, you're getting some medical help, and then you're terrified to make any money. You're terrified to not be poor because you know what it was like before you got that help, and you're not sure what to do, what you can do. This would help so many people, to know that there's someone they could call and it's okay. They'd be, within the law and they're not going to lose anything.
Absolutely. And just being able to make those phone calls is so empowering for everybody. I mean, COVID was a great example when it started. I mean, how many things changed day by day when it came to government help and government assistance and what you could do and couldn't do, particularly. I mean, employees didn't know their rights. Employers didn't understand their responsibilities. And it was just mayhem out there. And for the folks that had Legal Shield, they could just pick up the phone and call the lawyer and say, hey, what help is there for me? Me, the individual, me, the business owner, me, the employer or the employee. What avenues is there? And they could help them navigate all of those weeds and come out on the other side without having, maybe gotten something they weren't entitled to and now have to pay it back, or vice versa, missed out on something that they were entitled to that could have really helped them out, and they just didn't even know it existed. I don't know about the US, but here in Canada, there is lots of money to be had in terms of grants and loans and scholarships and all kinds of money, government and otherwise. The trick is finding it. Most of it's not advertised, which is crazy. Absolutely crazy.
Yeah, I just want to share a quick story that is an unusual traffic violation story that was under my name, and I was involved because my name was involved, but otherwise it wasn't my activities that Texas was really clamping down on. So I go to my mailbox one day and I get correspondence from the Northern, I think it's like the Northern Texas Tollway Authority or something like this. And so when I look into it and I see what they were coming after me for, the story starts with that Sue and I, my wife Sue and I, and her daughter Alana with some friends, were heading up north in our camper. And our camper ended up with engine failure. The engine blew. So we had a situation where we just, had the thing towed to a junkyard, and then we just proceeded with the other friends. We just got out of our camper and just, got resituated in the different vehicles and just went on our weekend trip, and we never came back for that camper. So here you have plates on a camper, and we never, we never did anything with the DMV about those plates. We just completely abandoned the situation. And so now here I'm getting this correspondence that, a habitual offender, with the tollways of Texas and, through that license plate number. And so that there I sit. I wasn't doing any of that stuff in northern Texas, but it was in my name, and they were coming after me. And I'm making repetitive calls and communications to clear my name. And then I talked to basically the highest person in authority at the Northern Texas Tollway Authority. And she tells me, she's like, it sounds good, but we're coming after you. And I'm like, whoa. And the coincidence would have it, on the disability side of things, I just recently started work being appointed by Governor Scott Walker to the Wisconsin Council, the Wisconsin Council on Physical Disabilities. So I started to put that in there. I'm like, just so you know, I'm working with Governor Scott Walker, and you're kind of creating a Wisconsin versus Texas, combat here. I just tried to match your vim and vigor for the strong language, and but it was going nowhere. So now I'm in a pickle. So what do I do is I call our county sheriff, and so they end up having a deputy come to my house, and we're going through this thing. And so he's calling the phone line because he gets it, how I'm getting the short end of the stick. We're having conversations like, oh, you're lucky that there wasn't a death, by a vehicle with, whatever this vehicle is with your plates on it. You're lucky there wasn't a death, because then you're, maybe he would have had to come to my house and throw me in jail until it was situated. But wow, what a rigmarole. And so we're going back and forth, and nobody can help us. So it looks like I'm going to be like up against potential, like the penalty if I don't clear this all or pay the fines and all that is to be a felon. They basically run you through hearing, and potentially hearing is to come out of it as a felon. And so the one thing I noticed in all this communication and research I was doing looking into it was they have a fraud line. So I called the fraud line, get into that. So I end up talking to the guy at the highest level of their fraud services, and he gets it now. So he understands it. So fortunately, I did enough work with this that I ended up clearing my name. But wow, what a situation to see your name as a habitual offender, to have this, court processing on documents where, if you don't pay the fine and show up in court down there in Texas, result is the judge could just throw the gavel and you're a felon. Boom. With all the fines and everything that come on top of all that. So yeah, things can get real serious real fast. That was an interesting experience for me. But I want to get back to Tim here with Hope Advanced. That's an interesting story. Cheryl and I met through the Happy Neighborhood Project. And with the Happy Neighborhood Project, there's a professional I met out of Ohio. And of all things, this health professional out of Ohio knew about a group in Colorado Springs, Colorado, where Tim Richardson from Hope Advanced is a part of this group. And so we've been networking and collaborating ever since. It's a VetNet group, Veterans Network, out of Colorado Springs, Colorado. They host some of us on Zoom while there's like 30 people in a room at Hope Advanced. Tim hosts this group every week on Tuesdays. And but let's get back to this mantra: broken, busted, and disgusted. So Tim, take us back to before you were serving the broken, busted, and disgusted. How did you come to a moment where you were inspired and you felt there was a calling for you to be in the social service this way? And how did you ever come up with the name Hope Advance? What's the backstory to all this? Because honestly, I don't know that you ever told it to me. So let's do it right here.
Well, okay, I'll give you the short version with the highlights. 1967, I'm a senior in high school. I was a September baby, and in the U.S., that means you got to start early, so you're the youngest of your senior class. Well, I had great grades about ready to come out in fall of 1967, 3 Fs, 2 Ds, and an incomplete. So I had a little discussion with my dad, and I said, look, let's end the pain here, sign off, let me go in the military. And this was in the middle of Vietnam. And what I was really telling him was I've been suicidal for years, and I don't have the guts to kill myself. Not sure that takes guts, but anyway. And that led into a situation where I ended up getting some psychiatric help, which was no help, I might add. But in the midst of all that, December of 1967, I had an encounter, a supernatural encounter with this guy. Is a good friend of mine. He's named God. And he said, you're to live, if for no other reason but to help other people. So that was the beginning. And that situation at that time was not good, but in 90 days, everything changed. And one thing, my life changed. I got back on track, headed in the right direction, quote unquote, but discovered I couldn't save the world, but that didn't bother me because I heard that voice. So now we'll fast forward to 2016, and I was on my way out here to Southern Colorado to Woodland Park. And without all the backstory involved, on the way, I stopped at my cousin's in Missouri. And one of the backstories there is 10 years prior to that, in 2006, her husband had died suddenly of a heart attack. And their 12-year-old son was present when he died on the sidewalk at the house or the driveway. And within 2 years, that young man, whose name was Kyle, was a roaring alcoholic. And now it's 2016, 10 years later. Okay, so we'll just keep moving the calendar forward. And I had discovered, I saw him on the way to Colorado from where I was coming from, which was in northern Kentucky. And he was sober, had a job, and he was out of rehab for the 15th time in 10 years. And this was a forced rehab because 6 months prior he'd gotten clean again, got caught stealing stuff from his girlfriend, and of course they just nailed him, and he should have been. And 6 months jail, he comes out, highly intelligent kid. I'm brought up in the right family. He had everything going for him except that incident in his life where dad died, and that he didn't handle that well, needless to say. And everything that was done, he still ended up, here he is 10 years later. So I saw him September 2016. The very first part of December 2016, I get a call. My mother's down with a stroke in North Carolina. I could tell just based on the circumstances she had a prior minor one, but this was probably not going to be one she's going to recover and stay at home. So I got in my car and took off for North Carolina from here, and I stayed at my cousin's. Said, how's Kyle doing? She said, well, he's been doing really well, except I haven't heard from him in the last 24 hours, which was unusual. There'd be some kind of communication. Could be a text, a Facebook, whatever. But anyway, so we ate dinner. I stayed with her, got up the next morning, and I knew that something was going to take place that day. I didn't know what it was. I'm not going to get into all the stuff, except I knew I was supposed to pray, and I did. She got up, and then I just shared with her the fact that things were going to change from that day forward, not knowing what that meant. But 8 hours later, she called me while I'm on the road, and he'd gone down with fentanyl and meth. He'd already died twice, and then he was fully intubated in a vegetative state and that was December of 2016. And in February of 2019, we buried Kyle. And essentially, he never recovered. He was always on 100% care, either in a wheelchair or in a bed. Okay. So there's part of this story. But in 2018, because I was involved with someone else helping them in a ministry, quote unquote, nonprofit ministry, they wanted me to be on their board. So I did some background work and knew of an organization which is called New Horizons Foundation, which is who we're part of, and discovered the best place for them, the best situation for them to go is go ahead and work with them. Well, they decided not to. And that was an indicator that I didn't need to work with him either. And it turned out his wife was a bad actor, and that's a whole nother story, but that's over with. So in September of 2000, I'm answering all your questions here, Kurt, of 2018, I heard that voice again like I did when I was 17. I knew it. Said, "This is yours." And it meant I was with the vision that I had, because I was going to help support that ministry in some way, shape, or form, start this. And then a month later, I heard exactly what the name was going to be. It was Hope Advanced. So, and then January 2019, we officially became Hope Advanced. But the other story in between all these stories is the secretary of the New Horizons Foundation was a friend of mine, as it turned out. Saw her in November of 18. This all happened in 2018, and was there discussing helping another individual start their nonprofit, which was working with people still in jail, but as they're coming out, jail and prison. And I was going to front the money for them to be part of that foundation in 2019. Well, right after that meeting, within a couple of weeks, I got a call from the lady who was my friend and secretary of New Horizons. And she asked me, she said, "Do you know my daughter, Megan?" And I go, "No, we didn't know each other like that. We knew each other on another basis, but not personally." And this will lead to the rest of the story here. But she said, "Well, Manitou Springs, which is a little suburb of Colorado Springs, police had called her, and they found Megan 10 days dead in her apartment." Now, Megan was 33 years old, mother of 5 boys. At age 30, 3 years prior, she went off the rails. She became a broken, busted, and disgusted. Nobody knew why, but she was the darling of the family. 5 kids, military marriage, everything was hunky-dory. She was a praise and worship leader, one of the praise and worship leaders of the largest church in Colorado Springs, which was tens of thousands of people. Anyway, but at 30, she went off the rails. We discovered later through her diary it was a marriage issue, okay? But she'd been out of rehab at least 5 times. And of course, now she's the black sheep of the family, except mom and dad still loved her, but they weren't giving her money or shelter or anything like else. But she saw mom and dad shortly after I'd seen mom in November of 18. And everything seemed hunky-dory. She had a job, had an apartment, had a cat, had her car. Life was good, and she was getting back on track. Essentially, she went home after that meeting with them in a short period of time, fed the cat, cleaned the apartment, and drank herself to death. And that's where they found her 10 days later. So I'm at the funeral a couple of weeks later, sitting right behind mom and dad. And her mom said, "You know, if you were doing what God's called you to do, we might not be here now," which was not any accusation. It was just, yeah. So, and there was a lot going on in my life then too. Ending the marriage, didn't know I was going to start another one, but officially in January 2019, Hope Advanced hit the deck, and at least on paper. And February, it's so funny. The second week of March 2020. Anybody remember what happened about that? That was when COVID became the real deal here. And I won't go into all the back details there, but COVID shut everything down and I opened my doors. at the office of my friend who had with Legal Shield, who had extra office space available. We made that deal on February 29th, not knowing COVID was even a thing. And now she's going to be renting office space for me here this fall in a new location. But now Hope Advanced, the 30-second elevator speech is we work with the broken, busted, and disgusted. So people are referred to us by people who know who we are. And at no cost, no obligation, we help people navigate to their next best steps, essentially a blank sheet of paper and a pencil. And as part of that, our sub project, as we refer to it, is advancing you forward, helping people with their credit, their background, as well as tax liens, because we work with an enrolled tax agent, and also student loans. So that's what we are. And now we're getting ready to move into a new location and start another part of our, call it another sub project, call it Hope Advanced Arise. And that's because of Kurt, knowing him. And one thing led to another. We may collaborate with another group, but what we're going to be doing is helping people find out how to get online jobs. The majority of that will be disabled veterans, but not exclusively. And then we're providing the space and a place and the bandwidth for them to do their jobs. So there it is.
Very good. Thanks, Tim. Thanks for sharing all that. Wow, what a gripping beginnings that you've had. And yeah, it's been amazing in my life trail of the last 15 years. Going back 15 years ago, I was hauled away in an ambulance, and I had kind of one of those, hey, Heavenly Creator, I'm here to do whatever I need to do, because I didn't know if I was on my way out, having a heart incident, heart event, near heart attack. It wasn't a heart attack, but apparently, medically speaking, it's as close as you could get to a heart attack without having one. Is what I went through, and so I have a lot of respect for those that do go through a heart attack, because I thought I was having one but didn't, and I'm like, wow, if that wasn't even a heart attack, geez, I don't want to have a heart attack. So, but Barbara, we had some noise coming through your device, so Emily muted you, but I want to give you a chance if you can take a look at the StreamYard and click that unmute button. I want to give you a chance to react and get a little bit of what your thoughts are hearing Tim's story and this business of broken, busted, and disgusted. And but while she's working on that, Cheryl, what's your reaction to what we heard from Tim in this background with Hope Advanced?
Wow. It just reminds me that, what we see on the surface, there is usually not a simple backstory, not a short backstory, but a whole lot of things that come into play when a business or a not-for-profit is started. And we often hear the story behind the name or sometimes the founder, but not all the details that go into play. And yeah, you just think, what if something had been different in each of those folks' lives? What if? And, it's easy to cast blame or even feel guilty and think, but you know what? Everything happens for a reason. Sometimes that reason isn't immediately apparent. Sometimes it appears later. And you know what? It's all just learning experience that we can take forward and help folks in the future in whatever way we can. That's all we can do. Can't change the past. Can't predict the future. We can just be our best selves today and contribute in the best way that we know how to help as many people as possible.
Absolutely. So, Barbara, I have a text here to Emily to see if you're able to unmute yourself. I know you're trying. So I don't know if she as admin has kind of had an admin muting. So Emily, please check on Barbara's mic for us. But I want to just share a quick story that I've told on podcasts in the last year and a half before. But it's one that kind of hits this area of what we're talking about with other people and just the stuff that people once in a while have to go through. But this was even simpler. This wasn't even like anything magnificent of the reflection it gave me on what a set of people can do to an individual, or what society, the effects society can have on a person. And this is something I love water skiing, and we practice our water ski show on Tuesday nights. And I came in out of the water, skied on up. I grabbed my skis and I'm ready to try. So when I come up, over to my left is where I run over to get back to the staging ski area. But instead of doing that, I looked out the corner of my right eye and I caught somebody looking, and I'm a show skier. I put on water ski shows. So it's like when people are watching, I mean, that's the thing, when you have an audience. And we even have a guy from the Tommy Bartlett, era of things, his mantra was never waste a crowd, So I think that was a little contagious. We kind of have that mantra. So, all right, here we have a gentleman looking on. And I looked at him and I said, hey, did it look like we did anything okay out there? Like, did you like anything we did? And just wanted to see, what kind of positive vibe he has about watching us water ski. And he showed that he enjoyed it. And I asked, what do you enjoy out on the lake? Do you fish? Do you ski? Do you do tubing? What do you do? And he shared some stuff with me. So I got the idea he likes being out at the lake. And I'm like, well, what about joining our ski club? And I put a little bit of a pause in there, because that's what it was. And it was a lot longer of a pause, but I was relentless. I just stood there and I just looked at him and I gave him body language. And I asked the question because I'm thinking the response you have is going to be meaningful. Like, I just have my ears going, my mouth, I zipped it shut. And the only thing he could come up with was, I thought you had to be somebody. Just think about, that really hit me. To really think that we have this dynamic, like Kurt Roscoe comes up, part of the ski club, and like I'm something, I'm all that, and like he's not worthy to be in the club with me. Like there's this differentiation. Like I'm at a class higher than him, and like he's like not even in that situation where he could, in his mind, he's thinking he could not be in the club. And I'm like, wow, to think that happens out in society, that we have, whether it's assumed or whatever, that people assume or presume that they don't deserve to do something that's right in front of them. And that's something I carried with me ever since that night. And this was like, I don't know, 6-7 years ago, maybe 8 years ago tops, But that really riveted me, because when you love something and then you see somebody excluding themselves from that equation, and it's coming from somehow how we present ourselves, like, hey, look at us, we're great, and you're lucky you can watch us, type of dynamic. And I think in other ways we do this in our life path. We are with groups that have this group dynamic with other people, and this is what, in the last decade of my life, I've been aiming to serve. I've been trying to deal with, biases and stigmas. So I guess that's where it comes from, is stigma. My hope, hope advanced, broken, busted, and disgusted. When we look at the stigma around that's what I hope we can spend the next decade of humanity working on, is that people don't need to feel that stigma, because when we think of our faith lives, that doesn't equate in our faith lives, does it? So Barbara, I know that you came on mute. Now you're muted again. Emily, I don't know if you're out there, if you were trying to help the sound and muted her again. But if we get Barbara, I want to give you a chance to react and chime in on this conversation. Take it away.
No, I just was able to unmute. Now you can hear me, right? And there's not a lot of static.
We can.
Yay. And sometimes it's so much more simple than you can possibly imagine, right? Like scrolling up, scrolling down. It surprises me. It's like when you can't find something and you say, oh, if I was a really smart person, where would I have put it? And then you go look there and it's there. I love, when things like that happen. I'm realizing the way we, this is a smart person, this isn't, and just realizing, just taking a deep breath, and letting yourself think again. And it just, I can't wait till so much of the excitement in the air around us, like at a football game, or at a boxing match, is actually coming from people realizing that they're so much smarter and more capable, and life becoming more fun for people, because that's, the healing that we need to do. It's not that far away. It's not so much farther than like a warm touch and compassionate words, or learning these little tricks. So Kurt, I'm trying to remember what is the question that I'm responding
Well, I
to.
just wanted to give you a chance to share any thoughts that may have come to mind as Tim was sharing the backstory in terms of his calling into Hope Advanced and the program he does for the broken, busted, and disgusted, and even with listening to Carol talk about what this human services stuff is. What are your thoughts? What does it bring to mind for you?
Yeah, and just as I was saying, as people realize how we can help each other, it's a matter of dialogue. It's more than anything. I think we keep having road work done here in Hollywood, Florida, because when people who have been elected to say, where should the tax money go? They really don't know. And so, well, there's a pothole, on the street. People can always come up with that. But when we really start talking to each other, like I was talking to someone who worked in garbage cleanup, for the city. And he was saying, just like the lifeguards were saying, if the people who are voting where the money should go would talk to the people who are dealing with those subjects, they could learn so much. And I know when I was wondering about the 5 children, you said this woman had 5 little boys, right? She was just 33, so they had to be really young. And what happens to these kids? Where do they go? And we found out in Texas that like children that are taken from a mom, and this is terrible, when she's having trouble keeping up and their children are taken from her, and then she has to come up with support money for these kids that have just been taken from her. And what they started doing there was realizing that the kids would go like to a grandma who was poor and already very overwhelmed. That expression that you were just using is feeling like that. Well, these nurses from hospital there realized that that's too much for that grandma. That's too much for these kids. So somehow they got the funding that they could go around and they could be helpful, helping the grandma know how to handle certain situations, or finding out what the needs were, and just made such a difference. Because people, they don't even ask, like sometimes if you go to a show and you say, let's go sit up front, oh, can't sit up front, all those seats are taken. And I'll say, no, actually, most people think that. And if you go up front, you usually find some seats there, because that's what people are feeling. But when we really can start communicating with each other, like they started this program in Texas, made a big difference to the children and to the grandmas who were taking care of them. She no longer felt like so alone and overwhelmed. This is what this show is meant to do, right? Just get that dialogue happening and get these movements happening where we really are doing things to help. And I don't know about the Hope Advance. I know something was happening for veterans, and I really need to have the place to advertise so much more clear for people like me. Where is it happening, and how can you get there, and do you bring a tent, and how many days, and what's needed?
Well, if I can just chime in here, our mantra is not we got it all figured out, but together we can help people get to where they want to go. If their head and hearts are pretty much in the right place, you don't push them, you don't pull them, you walk with them. And then so much of it's just the lack of information, or the right information, or the right connection, if you will. So, Kurt, there is a website called Care Portal, Portal. It doesn't exist in all the states, but it really speaks to what Barbara was talking about. Locally in Colorado, there is a side nonprofit called Beautiful Redemption. I know the founder of that, director, his name's Mike Worley, and he's part of the overall organization called Care Portal. So if you get a chance, you may look at that and let me know if you want to reach out to him or some others, because it really speaks to what Barbara's talking about. Okay, people just don't know exactly where to go with some stuff. They want to help, and that's what Care Portal is. It's they work a lot with foster care families. So if there's a need, and there's a lot of people that are interested in knowing what those needs are, who have said, we would like to, we can, we want to help, but we need to know what to do and where to do it. Okay, we already figured the why out. Okay, it's just, and so if you've got 1,000 people in the country willing to do that, but yet there's tens of thousands of foster care families. So if you have 10,000 people that want to get involved, or 100,000, it's a lot easier to get it done. It's not on one person or organization. Okay, that you made me think of that, Barbara. That's why I wanted to. But it's also Beautiful Redemption, and then you'll see Care Portal is, I think, the overarching part of that. But if you want to follow up with Mike Worley, which would probably be a really great person, I'm connecting him with a bunch of people this week. It's really a good organization. Are you seeing it?
Yeah, possibly. Yeah, I found careportal.org. It says the Global Orphan Project. So I know that's a different.
Yeah, that's probably part of it. And his is Beautiful Redemption. So his particular piece is in working with churches, businesses, and individuals. Not to get money from them, just for people that have resources that do want to help if they just knew where they could. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so when I found Care Portal, I see it as careportal.org. When I search for Beautiful Redemption, I find a beautifulredemption.com, connecting kids in crisis to a community that cares.
That's it.
Okay, so
that's Mike Worley.
All right.
Great. I don't know where that'll go, but if you click on Beautiful Redemption, it'll show a picture of him real quick in the background. This super guy, over 30 years in the ministry, and then he worked obviously in the outside world as well, quote unquote. I mean, now this is what he does 100% of the time. Okay.
Well, very good. We got that extra nugget in there. That's the end of this episode today of
good
World of Ability podcast show. And so thank you, Tim Richardson, for sharing the Hope Advance story, and Cheryl Scott, your journeys with Prepaid Legal Services Incorporated, bringing us Legal Shield and ID Shield. And again, I'm yours, Kurt Roskoff, hosting the show, covering for our co-host, Denise Vargas, who we look forward to having back next week, and potentially again, Mariana Waikiki, one of our regular panelists, and Barbara here, coming in here to help me with the teamwork of the World of Ability team. Folks can feel free to email me at my radio show email, abilitymknow@gmail.com, or with the Disability Channel. I have Kurt at thedisabilitychannel.us. My phone number is 262-372-1754. Feel free to call or text me. That'll do it for us for right now. With
Shalom, everybody.
Shalom, Tim. Thanks again for being here.
Can't be here next week. I got to be at a picnic. Sorry.
Okay. Enjoy.
See you soon. Thank you.